Hello out there, everyone, and welcome back to a new year of What's the Word podcast. We are glad to be back. It's been a long time coming, and I'm excited to say that What's the Word is back with some new episodes this year. I'm Zach Hartle, and I'm joined, as always, by Jason Cox.
Hey, everyone. We're real excited for a new season. Thanks for our listeners in the past, and we're excited to get new listeners for our future podcasts.
So, Jason, I was thinking of starting off the year like you would start off any project, and I want to talk about estimating today. We've got a pretty special guest lined up. I got to say, I only have dabbled a bit in estimating, doing some simple stuff, spreadsheet kind of work. I don't know about yourself, if you have much estimating experience.
Yeah, it's been close to 20 years since I actually had to do a takeoff or some estimating, but back in the day, it started off with a coil book, a pencil, maybe a calculator, just counting numbers and guessing on hours. And then we probably stepped into Excel spreadsheets to get more sophisticated. But yeah, it's been a long time. I'm sure it's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, you bet. So our guest today is Melvin Newman. He's co-founder of PataBid. He's their chief technical officer, and they're kind of leading the way or getting into using AI for estimating and just a more advanced estimating software, which is a lot more accessible than some legacy estimating softwares, which we'll hear about. I'm also excited to share that near the end of the episode, we do have a promo code if you are ever interested in trying out PataBid or their estimating software, Quantify. So stick around for that, learn some more, and away we go. And here we are with Melvin Newman. He's the co-founder and CTO of PataBid, known as their resident nerd around there. Welcome to the show, Melvin.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Before we jump into too much, PataBid's an estimating software, estimating company, estimating solution. How did you get there? What's your experience? How did you get to where you are? What's your background?
Started my career in construction back in Ottawa. Graduated out of Algonquin College with mechanical engineering, and initially started out in project management, kind of on the operations side of things. Didn't quite enjoy it as much as some people do, and so was given the opportunity to switch into estimating, and literally nobody knew what that was. And so got to move upstairs, if you will, at the company and join the estimating team as the guy who was like half everybody or a third everybody else's age up there. And got to be mentored by some truly amazing people on the estimating side, and realized that construction as a whole is not a particularly innovative field. At least it wasn't, a few years ago. It started to pick up now. And estimating is largely ignored and very legacy. So from there, moved around to a couple of different companies to get some different experiences, and really started building tools to automate my own job. Estimators are very rare these days. And so much more is being demanded of a much smaller pool of experience and people. And so really had to start building some tools to automate the labor intensive portions of the project, or of the career. And so took that and kind of showed it to a buddy of mine went to school with while we were playing video games one evening. And he's like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of neat." And then a couple weeks later, he calls me up. He said, "Hey, I did some looking around, and it doesn't look like anyone's kind of approaching these problems with AI like you're doing." He's like, "Let's start a company." And so it was kind of like, "Sure, why not?" We had started our first company together in college. Largely to get around some rules that the college had put in place regarding our capstone projects that we disagreed with. So we had done that, but this was the first kind of real venture. And we started up PataBid, and it ran for about 5 odd years, kind of as a hobby. I stayed in estimating, was working in Calgary here at that time. and I was still really enjoying estimating. It's a huge passion of mine. But then the company started to grow. We started to get a bunch of clients on board, and it started to turn into another full-time job. And a decision had to be made, where to go. And decided to, we've done close to 15 years worth of estimating by that point. Why not try something a bit different? So went full bore last year at PataBid. So that's kind of the quick bio of Melvin there.
Nice.
In no way to be insulting, can you please explain to myself and the viewers, or the listeners rather, how you can be passionate about estimating?
Yeah, no insult taken there at all. I'm not entirely certain. I mean, so a little further back in history, there was born in Africa, born in Kenya. Spent some time actually. First little bit of my life, my first crib was a drawer in a dresser. Not because of anything bad, it just happened to be in the backwoods of Kenya. So always had kind of that more unique upbringing in life, and I'm a hardcore nerd. And so I love estimating because of the data. Everything is data. Estimating is strategic, under the gun. You've got to get this estimate put together in 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the size of the project, and you're committing the company to the next 2 to 3 years of their life. And so, a building is going to take 2 to 3 years to build, and you have 2 to 3 weeks to bid the thing. How do you do that? Well, the only way to do that is heavy data analytics, understanding how things can be built, highly imaginative thinking, because you're given very little on which to base this. And like I said, the mentors that I had in estimating really honestly gave me a passion for this, because they were very passionate, and they showed me that it's not a normal game. Like, once you've won the project and you start to build things, it's very prescribed. You got to get the foundations first, blah, blah, blah. But when you're looking at the estimate, you have none of those restrictions, and you have to come up with a game plan to put it together. And it's the ultimate poker. It's the ultimate gamble. So how do you tilt the table in your direction and make sure that you've got everything covered just enough, and then you work with the ops team to make sure that it's all profitable? And people, they kind of miss that fact, that estimating is committing your company to all of the future problems you're going to have in those first 2 to 3 weeks, and you have to get it right. So yes, I am extremely passionate about estimating, because I think that it is the linchpin around which the entire construction industry rotates, and people don't tend to realize how important that is. So they leave it in the hands of juniors and that sort of thing, when really it should be the capstone of your company, because it is. Does that answer the question?
it really does. It really does, because when I was first thinking about it, I was like, I'm sure accountants are passionate about what they're doing. Almost the same thing. You're like, here's a process. We're going from A to B to C, and it could take months. But the word that you mentioned, analytics, I am a sports junkie, and analytics is all over sports now. So I 100%, that's your explanation was perfect, and I, sports guy, figured it out. So yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I like the analogy. I'm not a sports guy, but if I had to pick a sport, it would be football. I very much enjoy specifically south of the border football. But it's the amount of strategy that goes into the plays, and at the high end, like when you're sitting in the bleachers there or watching on TV, you're seeing a ball go back and forth. Like, let's be honest, you're seeing a ball go from one end to the other and back again, and then people cheer whenever it gets to one end. But if you start to break it down and look at all the pieces that make that ball move, at the end of the day, the ball is nothing. Like, it can't move by itself. It is its own little one piece of this whole game. It happens to be the most important piece. So if that ball is your profitability, your quarterback is probably one of the more important people on that team. But the quarterback almost never is the one that gets to that final touchdown, especially when you start at the middle. There's a whole team that gets there, but the quarterback always starts every single play. So every player that's going to get injured, every, person that gets taken down, every sack that does happen always revolves around that quarterback. So that, to me, is where the estimator is in your company. They pitch that number downfield. And then, yes, it's on the rest of the team to carry it the rest of the way. But if you don't have that QB, if you don't have that person as the strength of your team's going nowhere. Your company's going nowhere. So that is kind of my nerd level sports analogy. Take it with a grain of salt.
No,
yeah.
It sounds great. Yeah.
I don't know sports, and I understood it. So
in high school, I was invited to join the football team on a number of occasions because I was one of the bigger guys in the school. And nope, computers always went back to the lab.
Oh, I think that's for self-preservation. I think that was a really good idea. So everything we've said so far here, Melvin, it's critical to have a successful estimate. So I'll do that again. From everything we've talked about so far, Melvin, it's critical that your estimate is on point, or you're just not going to succeed with the project. A lot of people starting out building their companies probably don't put in enough awareness on how critical that bidding process is. Do you have any advice to people that are starting out with a business on how they should be conducting themselves?
That is an incredible question, and it goes to kind of my personal train of thought. So, take this with a grain of salt again, but I don't think that I would have so much advice for people starting out right now. It's more for you guys. You guys are at the very, very front end. Jason, Zach, you are educators. You guys are teaching the up and coming people who will own these companies in the future. And I think one of the key failures or misses right now in the education sector is we produce very excellent tradesmen. We produce excellent construction workers. What is missed is that a fair chunk of these people are not going to stay there for their entire career. They are going to reach journeyman status. They are going to reach master electrician status. And then they're going to realize, I want to start my own company. But the education has taught them how to properly terminate wire, how to properly install breakers, how to properly install all this, and has really never touched on the business side of it. Like, why are you installing this breaker? Because there's a business plan somewhere. And I realize, you don't have to get into very deep detail on this in the education realm when you're building tradesmen and that sort of thing, but they need to understand what is involved in the business aspect, because a fair number of them are going to go and start their own businesses. And a lot of them are going to be starting that fairly blind, to be honest, not realizing the front end aspect of that business that is so crucial. And it's no fault of theirs. It's just literally not known. When I moved into estimating, I literally came out of college not actually knowing the word estimate. I kind of had this ethereal idea that, yeah, people pay for buildings. But that was it. That was where it ended. How they paid, why they paid, what they paid. There was nothing touched on that. But we were taught, all of the ways of calculating out a heating system, all of the ways of building out HVAC, but never how the cost impacted that. And even at the, mechanical engineering or electrical engineering levels, there's a cost impact to everything you do. So when you're calculating out these systems, and this is something that was just never touched on, if you pick aluminum wire versus copper wire, there is a vast cost difference between those two on both material and labor. And all of these things have an impact on the success or failure of the project. And that's just really not touched on in the education world. And so my advice is really more for the education side of things. We need to start teaching these things, because unfortunately it's not something that you can literally just go in and pick up. Understanding how the estimating process works is complex, and especially when you start to get into risk analysis. So I mean, if you're typically, let's use electrical for example, you're the master electrician, you decide you want to start your own company, it's like $60 to go and do that. Okay, beautiful, I have my own company now. Now what? Well, now you need to go find work. So typically they stay in kind of the same pool that they started in, so whether that was residential or maybe light commercial, that sort of things. They start to go and knock on doors, and then suddenly, an owner says, okay, I'll give you a shot at this project, but I want you to price it. Now what? You've gone and installed tens of thousands of plugs, but what did that actually cost at the end of the day? Because every time you went to pick up those materials at the city electric supply, it's there for you. Or you just say, contact home office for a PO number. You don't even know what you don't know. And so it's one of those things where, if you, to the tradesmen who are looking at starting their own company, find out somebody who can give you that training on the front end of business. I mean, we work very closely with an organization out of Calgary here called Suderman Estimating Services, and they actually provide, it's specific to electrical, but they provide estimating training. And they get right down into the nuts and bolts of, okay, how do you do an estimate, right from, okay, how do you take a set of drawings and start to turn that into a price, up to how do you get quotes in, how do you analyze these quotes, because it's an abject train wreck out there. You'll go for 3 quotes and get 6 different answers, and the prices will be totally out of whack. And we've run into this with some of our clients, just trying to get across, like, okay, when you get a quote in, 2 quotes for lights, let's say, one of them is half the other. That is not a good thing. That is not because at the end of the day, to produce a light fixture, especially an LED light that we have all around us, they're all roughly the same price. Like, let's be honest. So, they're using the same raw materials to produce these lights. So what's different between these quotes? And you're always getting these quotes a half hour before your price is due. So you have to understand what to look for, because I guarantee you that the half price guy probably only has half the lights. Or what more often happens is he left out the control system. So, yay, you're getting the lights, but if you carry him, you have half the project. So it's all of these pieces that go into learning that. And unfortunately, a lot of companies get burned really badly. And it's one of those ones where the other piece of advice I'll give you is software is not going to solve that problem for you. Software, at the end of the day, even what we produce in estimating software, is a really cool calculator, even with AI involved in there. AI is, again, just a very high level algorithmic calculator. It cannot replace your knowledge, your tradesman experience. It can start to warn you when things are going off the rails, that you need to, take another look at something. But that's about the best it can do. Everybody looks at ChatGPT, for example, right? Like, we all know ChatGPT these days. But what it is at its true core is a really excellent averaging engine. It averages all of the data that it's fed in, and that's how it produces its results to you when you ask it a question. The problem with that is that it can't know your local conditions. So, like when we train our AI on pipe fabrication, for example, and it can pull apart pipe fabrication isometric drawings for you autonomously, put together the whole bill of materials for you really quickly, all this cool stuff. But it doesn't actually know the size of the doors to your shop. It doesn't know if any one of those pieces of pipe can actually fit in your shop and the cost implications of that, because now you have to add 25% more field welds. The AI just simply will never know that because it's averaging everything that it knows. So that's kind of like a piece of advice for tradesmen starting out. Software is not going to replace you. It's going to speed you up dramatically, but you still have to know what you're looking at. And if you don't know that, find somebody who does, who can teach you that before you put your company at severe risk.
Yeah, that's a topic we've discussed and has come up many times for us. That missing piece in technical training is that the soft skills, right? The critical thinking. It's like our technical training is great here in Alberta, and but yeah, it's that missing piece of the soft skills, the how to write an email, the how to interpret some data, all those things. So I do want to get more into the AI and where things sit now, but just really quickly, take us back to when you first started estimating. Were we talking pen to paper, counting light fixtures, or are we talking an Excel spreadsheet? And then take me to now. Let's say I get a strip mall bay. What did it look like back then when you started, and what would it look like now using your software?
Yeah. So the first day of estimating, I got my new desk. I sat down. Chief estimator walks over with like 30 pages of handwritten tick sheets. And it was every piece of the project handwritten out. And he handed me an NAPHCC labor manual and a all-pricer red book, a calculator, and a pencil. And he said, I've got all the quantities here. You find this item in the red book, put the price there, use the calculator, extend it out. You find the labor in the manual here, you pencil that. And he said, and I looked at him like, this is hilarious, man, right? Like, where's the computer? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this is what you do. I'm like, this is horrifying. This is like gulag level horrifying. What are we doing here, people? And so I did that once. And I'm like, this is just, no, this is horribly manual. This is a recipe for disaster. And I mean, I was like 21 years old. So yes, I knew everything, it was awesome, blah, blah, blah. And don't worry, the chief estimator put me in my place numerous times and corrected those deficiencies because he was absolutely brilliant guy. And so I looked at this and I'm like, okay, step one, let's try to at least automate the data. So moved into Excel at that point, built a relational database that Excel could talk to that pulled all the information in. And so, a week later, when he came with the next one, which was like 100 and some sheets, and plunked it down, I'm like, sweet. I'm like, let's do this. And so ran it through and had it done in a couple of hours instead of the 4 days it took before, which was a double-edged sword, because then management looks at you and says, this is amazing how fast this can be done now. Here's 5 more. So we're like, okay, but from there we moved into, okay, let's find some software to help us with this, like dedicated to estimating. And we looked at, I mean, there's really not a lot out there when it comes specifically to the mechanical, electrical, plumbing space. And so, I mean, people look at Bluebeam, right? People look at Excel. These are not estimating tools. They are quantification tools. They help you do that, but they don't really actually bring much in way of building an estimate out. Excel can. Excel is a fantastic sword that can unfortunately cut you just as fast as, your data. especially when you screw up a formula and don't actually realize it. I saw one guy who handed me his Excel-based estimate one time, and it had like 60 tabs all along the bottom of all the takeoff, everything to do it. And I'm like, I just approach Excel with like, put on the hazmat suit, assume that it's horrible, all that kind of stuff. And sure enough, realized one of the formulas had stopped picking up the labor and materials after tab 30. And I'm like, dude, this is, we caught it before it closed, so we weren't sunk. But I'm like, this is the hazards of Excel. So we started out pen and paper. We've moved into, Excel and Adobe / Bluebeam. Then you get into actual estimating packages. I mean, you've got at the GC level, you've got ones like Hard Dollar. At the MEP level, you have, Trimble AccuBid, McCormick. But a lot of these applications are quite old. They're legacy applications, and they haven't kept up with the technology. So that's where our platform Quantify came out of. I finally got fed up with the existing platforms because, again, I'm trying to get into the data, because at the end of the day, data is your gold in any of these companies. And the estimating platform starts that vein of gold right at the beginning. And unfortunately, a lot of these legacy applications have no way of getting that data out of them. Their databases stopped being developed in 1984 was the one of the core ones that actually underpins electrical in all of North America. That database ceased to exist in 1984. And so it's still being sold today. And so it's a rather fantastic problem to get information out of that. So we started to build Quantify, and we want to bring AI in to automate everything as much as possible. Because one of the key things in estimating is the takeoff, right? Like the takeoff is the foundation of your estimate. The problem with it is you'll spend, I actually quantified this a few years back at one of the companies I was working for. You'll spend 80 to 85% of your time, sometimes up to 90% of your time, putting together an estimate, just counting things. So out of those like 3 weeks you're working on the project, like 2.5 of those weeks or more are spent literally just counting all the widgets on the drawings. And then at the end, if you're responsible for buying all the equipment, like the switchgear, the pumps, all that kind of stuff, the vast majority of what you've counted is only worth 25% of that final price. So the cost benefit makes no sense in there. You have to do it, but it takes the most time and produces the least amount of value. So if we can start to automate that, what does that mean? Now you can actually go out and negotiate better buyout pricing. Now you can spend time on relationship building. You can do all of these other things. And so we decided to build our platform on an AI foundation that would start to pull apart those drawings, those pieces for you, and start to do that. So that's really where our platform got its start. Initially, when we showed it to some people, it scared them. They were like, "This is a little bit crazy." So we dialed it way back and released the platform kind of with a hybrid AI manual process up until this year. And then ChatGPT happened. Everybody got psychotically excited about AI. And now everybody's like, okay, we want to see this full AI going again. And we're like, oh, okay, we got to bring this thing back to life. And we had stopped developing on that side of it in 2020. So, 3 years later, it's like, let's get this going again. So we've been working on that this year. But at the end of the day, that's where we're headed. A lot of people talk about 3D modeling, right? I'm sure, everybody, I've heard this for the last decade. 3D modeling is going to make estimating non-existent. And I severely disagree with that. I did part of our platform monitors public procurement across all of North America. It monitors for construction jobs. It monitors for everything. But I sent the platform out to collect 600 odd construction projects that were public procurement. So yes, this isn't private. This isn't heavy industrial, but it's public procurement. How many models do you think came with those tender packages? Just throwing that out there.
I'm going to say one.
I'm gonna say 4.
Maybe 2. 1 or 2.
It was 0.
Wow.
There were exactly no 3D models issued with those tender packages. And what was even worse was 40% of those tender packages, the drawings, you could actually tell. I mean, every CAD package has a flavor. You could tell they were done in something like a Revit and then printed, stamped, and scanned back in. And that's what came in over 40% of the tender packages. So we are nowhere near 3D model based estimating. And the other fundamental flaw with it is for the few packages that did mention that a 3D model existed, they said it would be given to the awarded contractor, of course. I mean, in some of those instances, you can kick and scream enough to get a hold of the model at the beginning. Those models don't help you in the MEP space. Revit was never built to be an MEP-based CAD package. It's being hacked into that position now, but at its beginnings, its foundation, it's an architectural tool. It's a structural design tool. They are heavily investing in the MEP space now, but it's Band-Aids on Band-Aids to get it to work. And no engineer completes an MEP design, especially at the beginning. So if you're a GC, yes, 100%, you can actually bid from a 3D model because all you're interested in is the concrete foundation and excavation. That is 100% modeled in every 3D model, because if you don't get that right, your whole building's screwed. Yeah. So that one's dead simple. And I've worked with some GCs, and they've got some fairly sophisticated workflows where they can fairly quickly, do an estimate for concrete and formwork and rebar out of the 3D model, because that's literally the only 3 materials there are. When you start talking electrical, a single electrical run out to a plug can typically be comprised of like 10 different materials. And that's a single plug, from your morettes to your wire to your, connectors and all these different fiddly bits. And you can't build the system without that. And those are never modeled in any 3D model, because if you did, Revit would fall down really hard. I've actually played with this and done, that kind of extreme fidelity on a 40-foot model for a kiosk for plugging ships in. We modeled it right up to fabrication, and so we could do VR walkthroughs and everything of this. Revit chokes. I mean, that was only about a 40-foot by 10-foot footprint, and with that level of detail, it chokes. And that's what you need to estimate, because that's what you need to build. So Revit is never going to provide you, especially at the beginning of the project, the level of detail you need to estimate, because it simply can't handle it. So I see, 2D being around for a very long time still. And so that's what we focused on. That's what the AI handles best, and kind of runs with right now. And because AIs are very intuitive, that's one of the kind of neat things with them. They have an actual level of intuition. They can start to fill in things that aren't there. So, when it sees a plug symbol on a drawing, it can actually know, okay, there's more behind this symbol. There's more to it than just this one thing that's attached there. And that's kind of where the future of estimating is going. We can take that 80-90% workload and reduce it down to 50% of the time, 40% of the time. And now you have time to do proper risk analysis, which is also a place where AIs are very good at. starting to identify when a project, because of the intuition, smells bad. Like, does this actually make sense? Are you, based on your company's history, is this heading in the right direction? And it should never answer for you but it should give you the chance for you to answer it. If that makes sense. Does that kind of make sense there, Zach? Where we're headed, where I see the future of this?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, right? And there's no denying, like you started off the show saying, there's a slow progress in construction, and that was something I experienced when I was, well, I guess I kind of am in construction, but and now it's coming, right? We have to progress, right? We have to
We
find
have to.
ways to save labor, to do things more efficiently, to do things more economically. So I haven't estimated in a couple of years. When we're looking at this AI, and I scan in a set of prints, or I probably hopefully have the digital file and I upload the set of prints, but I'm sure it still gets scanned in sometimes. And it's looking at like a room with 24 light fixtures, and it says right in the middle, type 7, and then there's 24 boxes. Does the AI count all the boxes and know they're all type 7? Like, is that where we're at? That's one problem I've heard of the pattern recognition in estimating software as it was coming through, right?
100%. And pattern recognition also falls down when, an engineer is lazy and uses the same pattern to mean multiple different things. And again, this is where you cannot replace the intelligence of the human. The human always needs to question the AI. But what AIs let you do is bring that next level higher. So construction drawings are awesome in that they are probably most programmers slash, data analyst guys' worst nightmare. Construction drawings are informationally dense. So they have a tremendous amount of information on them and almost no context. So we've got, we're in the recording here. I've got my camera turned on. There's an AI that is picking me out of the background so the background can be blurred by the software. That is actually far easier for the AI to know because it knows what a human is, because it's been trained on a whole bunch of humans on a whole bunch of backgrounds. So it knows what isn't the human as much as it knows what is the human. When you look at a construction drawing, it's black and white lines. And the only context you have is where those lines intersect, what those lines format is, and what's really horrifying is the new versus old construction drawings, where the only way to tell what's new is the line is a little bit thicker. You're getting into context is everything when you're building an AI for construction drawings. And that is the hardest piece to crack. How do you get that context? So how do you know that type 7 annotation is related to all of those boxes in there? And we humans can look at that and pick it up relatively quickly if we've been in the trade. But if you hand that to somebody who's never looked at drawings before, they won't be able to pick that up. So what we've actually done with our AI is the first thing we do is we train them on real life. We use, I don't know if you're familiar at all with AI stuff. There's a data set called the COCO data set. And what it is it's literally thousands upon thousands of pictures of real life objects. So humans, stop signs, all this stuff. So we provide a foundation to the AI of what real life looks like. And then we start to show it, here's what drawings are. So it already understands where things can be picked up contextually. And then you start to give it the contextual weak drawings. And now it can start to understand, okay, here's what's kind of happening in this thing that makes no sense to me. But we're still at the stage of basically really advanced computer vision. We haven't reached the point where it actually understands that, okay, this symbol is a light fixture. But what it can do is say this symbol is actually related to this piece of text over here. So it can figure out that this type 7 tag actually is related to all of these. And it uses, intersections, basically the same thing that our human mind does to start to correlate. And then at the very end of the day, and this is why you should always question your AI, it uses its own intuition and says, okay, this is close enough. I'm going to say it's this. And the one thing that's really fascinating about AIs will always 100% give you an answer unless a programmer has specifically blocked something out. But what's hilarious, like ChatGPT is always 100% generating the answer, and they've put fences around whether you can see that answer or not. But the actual AI, because of the math that they're based on, will always generate an answer. They have to. It is part of the rules that they work on. So that means that answer it gives you may not be correct, because it may flat out be guessing at the end of the day, which is hilarious. When you see one of our NLP AIs, I got a good laugh out of this a couple of years ago. Read the one that reads the all the public tenders. We had a tender come across the system for the RCMP for prisoner restraint chairs. And so the AI, having never heard of a prisoner restraint chair, said, this has to be office furniture. And I'm like, I was sitting in my office when I read this, and I'm like, man, on so many levels it was right, but it was also wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the problem with an AI. It can be 100% convinced that it's right, but it's actually categorically wrong. But when you go and you read, what the AI saw, I looked at that and I'm like, okay, yes, it was titled prisoner restraint chairs. And the AI went and read all the documentation, and it said, these are chairs to go in a room and blah, 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 which actually matches up really well with a cubicle. But this is not the kind of cubicle you really want your employer to invest in. So yeah, they're kind of fascinating in that. So we try, in our AIs to expose that to the user. So like if the AI is flat out guessing, take a double take at that, because that type 7 might have only meant the ones down the left hand side, and there was actually a type 8 tag that on the drawing happened to overlap a wall. So the AI thought it might be in the other room, but it was actually related to this other row. And we haven't got that level of intelligence yet. The human mind is just amazing what we can put together once we know something. And so we're able to do things much quicker. That's where the AI can step in and really accelerate that aspect of it, but not replace your intelligence. Because it actually doesn't know what a type 7 light fixture is on any level. I mean, honestly, a tradesman doesn't know that till he gets the quote in either.
Yeah, for sure.
So if I could dumb this down for a second for me, right? So it almost sounds like the AI is becoming the estimator and doing the counting. Will the AI make me a suggestion of the raceway that I'm going to use and the conductor size and amount that I'm going to need?
So there's two aspects to that question. Sizing things, I don't believe the AI should ever do that. If an AI ever suggests that to you, run. Because again, an AI cannot know your local code requirements. It can't know that. But directions and best routing, 100% always let the AI take a crack at that. Because using genetic algorithms, you can an AI can very quickly find a more efficient route, that sort of thing. But then you have to approach it from, okay, this is what was drawn. This is a more like a potential edge that the AI has come from. But again, the AI doesn't know your client. So the AI can't know if you can actually get away with that. So, some clients, like for example, City of Ottawa, if you're going to work in one of their water treatment plants, the conduit must come from the factory pre-colored. Red, blue for different red for fire alarm, all of these pre-colored things. You will never get away with the significant cost savings of painting it yourself.
No.
They simply will not let you do that. Whereas an AI may make that suggestion to you. So, but it can't know, because at the end of the day, it's never going to actually manage your project or understand that. So that's kind of the nuances in there. Yes, I would say AI is 100% going to provide routing. We can already see that in Revit, for example. There's numerous modules out there now that you can put into Revit to auto route, piping, fixtures, all those kind of things. But again, they also have the limitation of the route it picks really depends on how much is shown there. And that's both a human and AI problem. I mean, I've been on projects where we came up with a vastly superior routing for a big chunk of pipe, only to realize that, the 3-foot thick wall wasn't shown on the drawing right where we were running through this pipe. So you're kind of into a fight then. But that really happens whether you're human or AI. But an AI can run those analysis for you and give you those kind of goalposts. Hey, here's where we are today. Here's some options for tomorrow. And this gets really big in risk analysis. So that's where I think the future of AI is really going to engage, especially in the natural language processing. You throw the spec documents, you throw the tender documents at it, it pulls out the schedules for you, and it can warn you about things like, hey, 80% of this job happens in the dead of winter. That is not considered in any labor manual. They give you factors for that sort of thing, but it's not a thing that's taken for granted. So you have to consider this winter work. Or, hey, there's liquidated damages on here, and the schedule says you have 12 weeks to finish. Your estimate says you're going to have a crew of 50 people to achieve that in 12 weeks. But literally 50 bodies can't fit in the room here. What do you want to do? So that's where AI is going to really help people with the soft side of estimating. That is where people oftentimes lose their companies, quite frankly, when they miss that liquidated damages statement because it's buried way outside of the mechanical electrical spec sections. It's not even in the spec document. It's always in a tender document. So one of the first things we do whenever we onboard a client is like, okay, what do you know about estimating? Like, what do you do here? Do you read the tender documents? When somebody sends you a project to bid, do they just send you the electrical drawings and maybe a couple of pieces of the electrical spec? Because if they're doing that, they're going to screw you in the end, because they are hiding from you the real risks on this project. So there's two ways to handle that. You can demand to see the rest of the documentation, which very few tradesmen do because they don't even realize these documents exist and they are legally binding, or you have to take exception to them in your pricing, like when you submit a quote. So we have, suggested T's and C's for our clients. When you're bidding, make sure you take exception to everything you don't see, because there will be a lot of things in there that can hang you up if you're not careful. And that's where I think the AI is going to kick in.
Yeah, so the AI is going to come back and give me a list of warnings, like,
yeah,
attention.
I mean, our personal end goal with the platform is I want you to throw everything the owner sends you, upload it into the platform. The AI will then take a run at that. And eventually, when we get to my glorious vision for the future, if you will, I don't know if, somebody's going to get there. Don't know if it's going to be me. I want the AI to read everything, drawings, specs, addenda, everything that you throw into this estimate. And then it's going to give you a red, yellow, green. And once you've worked on the platform for a year or two, that red, yellow, green is also going to take into account your prior history. So a core point where companies also implode is when they step out of one lane into the next one. So when they do that step change in growth, they take on something new. And you walk into that not knowing what you don't know. And so there's all of these risk factors when a company is stepping outside of their comfort zone that aren't recognized. Now, sometimes those companies can have, points in them where people have done this kind of work before for other companies. And if they can identify those people and bring them into the bid, they can mitigate a lot of those risks. Very few companies tend to realize that. And that's really where the AI is able to start to come in and say, hey, this is actually a yellow project. Approach with caution. Or flat out, based on what you're bidding right now, what you've bid over the last few years, where this estimate is trending, this is a red project. Maybe add a ton of money to it, submit the bid as a sounding project. If you really want to go after this, seek another set of eyes. And this is also what we tell a lot of our clients, especially the ones that, have only been a couple of years in business, is talk to Suderman, talk to these companies. They will actually do parallel estimates for you. Yes, that is a significant cost. But when you are stepping into something new, like especially the guys that are stepping from residential into commercial, or from commercial into industrial or institutional, that sort of thing, you need to pay, the thousands of dollars. If you pay $5,000 to get a major estimate produced in parallel to you, that might save you $500,000 of loss if you get it wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the companies that I personally work for were larger organizations, multinational. What was really lovely in the first organization I worked for was IT department did not fully secure the database server for the estimating platform. So I was able to log in and run business analytics against it. And that becomes huge when you're handed a project that you've never seen the like of before. I was able to log into the server and say, show me everyone in this company across North America that has bid on a project containing this. Okay, I'm going to call those people. And that was it. Pick up the phone and just start calling around. So we had subject matter experts. It was hilarious when I'd call them. I'm like, hey, you don't know who I am, but I'm bidding on this project and I know you've bid on something similar. And then they're like, how do you know this? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you that because then I'm going to lose this tool that I have. Because unfortunately, IT departments in construction are sometimes the worst hindrance to your progress. When they don't understand the sheer value of what they bring to the table. But yeah, so it's very fascinating when you can start to capture that data, and that's where the AI can step in and also say like, hey, this is a red project for you, but if you're a multinational company, here's some similar projects that were bid and here's the guy to talk to about it. Go. Like that's the soft part of where AI can step in. At the core technical, because the AI can't go to the site visit with you, because the AI can't, really dive into the drawings with the level of experience because it's never built anything and it never will. It's always going to have to be a tool to accelerate. It's never going to replace the estimator. You mentioned the AI becoming the estimator. I would suggest it's more the junior estimator.
Okay.
It can more be the guy that does those quantifications for you. And then yes, it gets into kind of a more senior role. It's kind of ironic. I think that AI is going to capture that very mundane junior role and also capture a large chunk of the very high level risk role. And where it's going to flounder horribly is that middle part. But that's estimating.
So when we look at your product for electrical, it's called Quantify. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our MEP product. So it covers electrical, mechanical, plumbing, pipe fabrication. So
is that product customizable for me, the small residential electrician, versus the institutional
100%? That was a core tenet of how we started out. Was our informal motto is complexity through simplicity. So we try to not really hide, but yeah, I guess hide would be a good way to do it. A lot of the complexity of the platform behind simplicity. So when you're first starting out and you're doing home building, that sort of thing, you can get in there, you can draft out your circuits because the home builders are never given electrical drawings. They're given floor plans and that sort of thing. So you can hop in there and you can draft out all this, and the system will backfill the information for, like, you draw a plug symbol, it's going to backfill all of the information for that for you. So when you're done your layout, you have the estimate. But you may need to customize that. There will be a day where you're like, okay, this owner wants the red USB Legrand plug for everything. Well, you can hop into the back end and change those assemblies. They're all formula driven systems in there, basically using a similar formula engine to what Excel has. So you can put all the, we've had some clients that have absolutely blown me away with the level of programming they've done into their assemblies. Like they ask you all the questions in plain language. Is this surface mounted? Is this in wall mounted? And then the assemblies literally morph themselves into the situation that the junior guy is taking off. I looked at the one client that came to me the one day. He's like, hey, we're having this minor issue with, the formulas when I input text. And I'm like, you're doing what? And so I go and look at what he had done. And I'm like, I got to be honest, man, I never even conceived of this possibility with the platform. I'm more shocked at how far you made it before you found an issue. And the issue took 30 minutes to fix. It was a non-issue. It was just literally something I hadn't conceived of. And so I'm looking at this, and I've actually put some of our other clients in touch with these guys, because I'm like, these guys are like the A team when it comes to building out a highly automated estimating workflow. And so, yeah, the whole system is customizable. We have kind of the global database of items and materials that you get out of the box, and we manage that. But the moment a contractor adds anything or makes a copy of anything, it's proprietary to them. Nobody else can ever see that. So that's kind of how we tried to play both sides of the game. And we, shamelessly ripped off a lot of the concepts for the structure of the application from Facebook, from Uber. What was hilarious with the way we did it was we were halfway there, and then I read some white papers from how Uber structured their back end, and we're like, wow, we're already halfway there. Let's just finish this off and go this way, because it gives you a fantastic amount of flexibility. And again, it's all hidden. So when a guy comes to us and says, hey, I'd really like to do this one esoteric thing, usually for us it's like, well, click here, here, here. He's like, oh, this is already built? I'm like, yes. It's just not necessarily visible immediately because we don't want to drown the people. And that's where our clients love it, because it tends to grow with them. That's the thing that tends to happen. They start out with the basics, they get familiar with it, then they start to do some more advanced things. A couple of our clients have jumped in, like they've been very experienced people, and they're like, I want to do bang, 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 bang today. And it's like, okay, well, we'll show you how to do that. Here you go. And then usually it's followed up with, I did not expect to actually be able to do that, because nobody else can. Like, one of the big ones is we run what I like to call Metperial. So, here in Canada, we are cursed with metric and imperial. And when you go to buy wire, you have to buy it per kilometer, so per 1,000 meters. But the conduit that you're installing it in on the same project has to be bought by the foot. So we actually implemented this because this always drove me nuts. No other MEP estimating package understands the difference between foot and meter. You actually have to load either a entirely meter-based database or an entirely foot-based database. And the meter one is never maintained because there's a much larger population south of the border using foot. Right. So we literally implemented units of measure in the platform to get around that. And then what it let us do for our very advanced clients, because I try to kind of fight against this. I will never stop you from doing what you feel is your business case, but you should question before you go meter and imperial on the same set of drawings. Yes, the system will let you do that. Yes, NASA crashed a multi-billion-dollar satellite into Mars doing that. So they literally didn't take it. One team worked in feet and the other team on the same flight software worked in meters. And then instead of gently entering into orbit around Mars, it went right into the middle beautifully. So I always warn guys, I'm like, just because the software says you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. But you know, if you're at that level, absolutely, we'll support you doing that. So yeah, to answer your question, we try to make sure everything is as customizable as possible in the software because, and I tell people this when they sign on, I'm like, the number one thing to realize when you sign on to Quantify is you're largely signing into my biases. You're signing into my bias as an estimator, the way that I did things. That does not mean that's the only way to do it. That's just what I know. So I'm like, if you don't like something in here, absolutely come to me and tell me. And like 99% of the time, yeah, we'll go and implement your way of doing things because it's not a bad way of doing things. A few of them, like the only one that I have, died on the hill so far is setting the scale on the drawing. So when you upload a PDF, you have to set the scales on the drawings. And, they're always like, where do I put in my 1 to 100? I'm like, nowhere. We will never support that. The only way to set the scale on the drawing in the software, you must take a measurement of a known dimension. Whether that's a door frame or an architectural column dimension, you must always have that known dimension because that will guarantee you that the drawing is to the correct scale, regardless of what the engineer set. And I screwed up an estimate in my life once very badly when I took the PDFs and ran with the scale that was set there, not realizing that the owner somewhere, and to this day I don't know why, within the PDF changed the page size. So it wasn't the engineer. They had done a 24 by 36 standard page size. When they uploaded it into the owner's tendering system, which by the way, this was Sask Tenders. So if you ever download a tender document from Sask Tenders, assume the scale is wrong because it always will be. Their system, for some reason, takes that 24 by 36 and reduces it to 11 by 17 internally. So they actually adjust the PDF. I don't know if they think that this saves on file storage. I was never able to get a straight answer for why this happened, but we were able to consistently replicate it across everything that was uploaded there. And so I took off this project with exactly half the length of material that was needed. And what was wonderful was it was a project that took place in tunnels. So largely length-based materials. And so I had all the number of elbows. We had all the elbows we needed. We had all the T's we needed. Yeah. The length was half of what we needed. And what made it even more awesome was we had decided we weren't going to bid this project. And I got a call the day before it closed from the GC who said, nobody is bidding this project. He's like, I just need a number. So I said, with absolutely no, again, young and dumb, with no oversight, said, sure, I will put this together for you tonight. Worked overnight on it, put the thing together, submitted a $3.5 million bid with no checks and balances. And of course, we got the job. And so very shortly after, this screw up was discovered with the scales. And the VP came down to my cubicle and basically was ready to walk me out the door. He's like, what you did there was incredibly asinine. And I looked at him, I said, I fully agree with you. You are 100% correct, but please do not dump this contract. And he's like, why? I'm like, because I knew I was going to screw up. I knew I was running overnight. I had no business doing what I was doing. So there is money in there. And he was like, where? I'm like, yeah, I can't really say right now. I just know it's in there. And so to his credit, he's like, okay, we'll run with it for a few weeks and we'll see what happens. And the PM took it and he started coming back to me and he's like, dude, he's like, is this really the labor rate you carried? I'm like, yep. I'm like, why? He's like, it's twice what we pay on this site. I'm like, perfect. He's like, okay. He's like, that does a lot to offset half the scale. Right. And then he comes back, he's like, did you really put 20% on this project or 25%? I'm like, yeah, that was entered at 3 a.m. And so I knew things were going really sideways by this point because I was utterly exhausted. And so in the end, the VP came down like a couple weeks later and he looks at me, he's like, yeah, we're going to do this project. We've run the full analysis on it. And in the end, we ended up making like, it was 18 or 20% on the project, like an unheard of margin. And then he came down and he was like, okay, you're moving out to Edmonton to take over the estimating out there. I'm like, so I don't know to this day if that was a punishment or a good thing, but that's how we ended up in Alberta. So I told guys, I'm like, never again. Like that was a one-off, once in a career maneuver. It was you went all in on your cards and hoped for the best, and it worked out. But I'm like, but as a result of that, when we built Quantify and go to set the scale in there, we absolutely forbid assuming that the scale is correct on the drawings. We've had, a few clients, they're like, well, what if I don't have something to measure? I'm like, okay, the day that you can ever show me a drawing where this truly doesn't happen, I'm like, we can talk about alternatives. To this day, nobody has. So,
right.
Yeah. So that was about the only hill that I've ever died on in our software where I'm like, no, we will not implement something.
Just to step back to one thing really quick, you talk about this big database of all the different materials. Let's use electrical for an example, because I know the most about it. Not the most of everyone, just, of the 3, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Is there pricing associated with that material? Like, do you pull data from different wholesalers? Because I know that varies between companies too. Or is that up to the contractor to go in and put in their pricing for their materials?
So this is the one spot where we have literally done like 6 different ways of managing pricing because of exactly what you've described. Some contractors, and almost every new contractor we onboard has some way that they like to manage pricing. And that's the one spot where I will almost always yield to the contractor because I know I'm like, we will implement pretty much any way that we can to help you with that because it is such a high risk and messed up thing. Like that's the one point where I don't want you to ever change your process because however you're handling pricing today, you trust it. And it's obviously working for you. Otherwise, you'd already be out of business. So yeah, we have like 5 different ways of doing that. Everything from dumping out Excel templates of your database for suppliers to load in for you, all the way up to we have a custom integration now with City Electric where it will literally pull your contractor price from their e-commerce platform. And then, when you win the job 6 weeks later, let you actually just order the material direct through their e-commerce so that you don't even have to go through the website anymore. So yeah, there is a lot of different ways of handling that. And we are always open to implementing whatever a contractor needs for their success in that.
And that's huge, right? That relationship between contractors and suppliers as well. Are you guys focusing on relationships with other suppliers as well? Like that sounds like a pretty powerful tool.
We're open to anyone. The only supplier that so far has actually agreed to let us in is City Electric. But we are, that doesn't mean you have to actually use City Electric in the platform. You can upload anybody else's supplier pricing in. It's just the easiest with City Electric because it's fully automated. But we support anybody and everyone going in there. One of the contractors actually asked us to integrate with another organization called Chimkey out of Vancouver, and they process invoices. So when a PDF invoice comes in, they will extract all the information out of it and they will put it into your ERP system autonomously for you. So if you're using QuickBooks or Sage or any of those, in your construction company, they will automatically feed this in, and it saves a ton of admin time. Well, one of the contractors came to us and he had an awesome idea, and he's like, is there any way that we could put like a T in here and have that pricing feed into my estimating database? So every time an invoice is processed into my ERP system, that price that I paid for that plug yesterday can also be staged into the estimate for all my future estimating. And so we did that. It took us a couple of days to build that integration. And so now, I mean, anybody can use it. You can go in and use your invoice pricing if you want as your current bid price, which in my personal opinion is the best way to go, because that's literally what you paid for it yesterday. That's probably going to be the best price you're going to get for tomorrow. So yeah, no, there's a lot of different ways, because you're hitting the nail on the head. Like, that pricing is extremely important, extremely volatile today.
And that's it with the sudden changes now, right? Like, it's so big.
And what we're actually finding, pricing in the last few months, so we also have a built-in system that grabs pricing, publicly available pricing.
Mhm.
So it's list price on materials, so it doesn't include your discount, but it's great for trending the market. And for, things that you're never going to get a discount on, like nuts and bolts. Like, so all the hardware is automatically priced in our platform, because nobody gets a discount on, panhead screws. So what we've noticed is the pricing has actually moderately stabilized over the last 6 months, to the point where some of it's actually coming down. Like, PVC is dropping now. Not hugely, it's a % or so, but we're able to trend all of that in our database for our clients, and anybody who asks. What is still a massive problem is you literally can't get a bunch of this stuff. So where people are running into issues right now is not so much the price that they bid at, it's the price of whatever the heck they can get. So, you may have bid fully legitimately with aluminum conductor wire. The spec allowed it, everything allowed it. It's the main feeder into the plant. However, when you go to buy it, you can't get the aluminum conductor. You have to go copper. And now you're looking at like 4 times the price for that conductor. And that's where a lot of contractors are flat out struggling right now. Or the better one is, you're trying to buy a transformer today. That's just a flat out good luck. Because, you're probably not getting that transformer today, tomorrow, or maybe 6 weeks from now. I was talking to one of the guys that I know is doing some NMAX work right now, and they literally demobed from site because they got everything done. The transformer, it's massive high voltage gear, but literally they've been told like 6 to 12 month delivery on that thing. And so, and now they were working for NMAX, and they were walking in. I'm assuming they walked into the meeting to tell them this, and they were expecting it to go very badly. To which NMAX replied, "We'll let you off on this one because we're actually waiting for 12 other ones that we've been told are the same delivery. So we know you're not lying." Yeah. So supply chain is still a massive issue. And I mean, that's one where, again, the estimating software you choose cannot fix that for you. What we've actually found that it can do is give you a tremendous amount of data to go to your client and say, here's where life is at. So if you want to put the screws to me, it's not going to help any of us in the end, because it's not going to change reality. I mean, we've even been caught with it ourselves, trying to order PDUs for data centers, like for our own data center. Because one of the things, like, we self-host everything. I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't like being beholden to Amazon or any of those guys. So we've built our own system that is compliant. We can fail over to them. But trying to get a PDU, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft have purchased like all PDUs plus their manufacturing futures for like the next 2 years. So if you're trying to buy an Eaton PDU, you're basically looking at something off the black market at this point to try to get it, because everyone's building data centers. So there's a lot of these things. I was just last week down in Denver talking to guys building data centers, and even they said, like, you just can't find these things right now because they're in such high demand.
Okay, Melvin, I'm interested in your product and I want to start using it to estimate my jobs. What sort of price point am I looking at here? I mean, I'm sure there's different levels.
No, there are no different levels. We try to keep, again, complexity through simplicity. We want it to be as simple as possible. We are $1,500 Canadian per seat per year, is what the platform runs at. You get access to everything in it. We evaluated, let's break up, trades and stuff. It was going to be more effort than it was worth at the end of the day, rather than just making life easier for the contractor. Our goal is to grow with the contractor. So we want you to buy one license today. We help your company grow. You buy another license later on. You're with us for the next 20 years. We're playing a very long game here. And so it's $1,500 per seat. Now, you can actually put as many users on the platform as you want, and they share from however many seats you buy. So what a lot of our companies' clients are doing is they'll buy a license for the estimator and then buy a license so that all the superintendents can share it and log in and see different things. Or, the owner operator guys, they'll buy one license and then they'll share it with their admin assistant to do counts, to do that sort of thing, or share it with the superintendent when he's low on work to bid more. We're all about trying to make life as easy as possible for the contractor and make sure the software stays out of their way. That's what we want more than anything else, is to be out of your way so that you can go make money, because then you'll grow with us. That's kind of our philosophy. What you'll get for support afterwards is we don't charge for training. We don't charge for, we have no upsells right now in our platform. We have no downsells. You basically get everything out of the box with it. If you want truly dedicated training, you go through Suderman for that. They'll give you full, from nuts to bolts estimate training in the platform. We also have an onboarding service with Suderman, which is really helpful for the owner operators. So for like an extra $1,000 one-time charge, what they'll do is they'll actually have a phone interview with you, and they'll go through who are your key suppliers, who are your key sub-trades, and they'll go pre-populate everything in your system, in your profile, with that information. So pricing will be there for you. It's about a week worth of work that they go through and customize everything for you. They'll set the priorities in there so that when you actually have that free couple hours, like 8 hours at 10 o'clock at night on the Saturday, when you have to bid the next job, you can log in and it's ready to go. So that's about the only upsell that we have as kind of like a white glove onboarding service, if you will. I don't think they're actually going to wear white gloves, but we can get them to do that. But yeah, that's about it. I mean, we try to keep it as simple as possible.
Hey, Zach, this might be a great time to mention that promo code.
Hey, you bet. So luckily we chatted with Melvin after the show here. We do have a promo code. It entitles anyone to 10% off their first year of the Quantify estimating software through PataBid. So we are looking at $150 off using the promo code WATTSCAST. That's WATTSCAST. Again, 10% off. It's good for that. And if you do the free 14-day trial before you sign up, just contact PataBid and mention the code, and they'll make sure you get that discount. Thanks again.
So I pulled up your website, Melvin, patabid.com. I'm assuming is the best place to go to find any information.
Yep.
Awesome. One of the very first things I see is a free trial. I haven't clicked the button, so tell me about the free trial.
Yeah, so free trial is literally a free 2-week trial. There is no requirement for credit cards. There is no commitment to payment. You literally just go create the account. So when you go to patabid.com, make sure you click on quantify for the estimating side of things. If you click on tenders, that is the public tendering side of things. So click on quantify, register the account, kicks off your free 2-week trial with no commitment required. If you run into issues, life happens. You had 5 hours, now you have negative 5 hours. And you 3 weeks later suddenly have some more time and you didn't get to try it, send us an email, reach out to us. We want to work with you. What we more than anything want to see is do an estimate in the platform, whatever it takes to get to that point, and then tell us what worked, what didn't work. We'll fix what doesn't work, and we want to see you happy and on board.
I love it.
Pretty
Beauty.
flexible.
That's what this is what's been blowing us away with our clients. Like, we straight up thought this was how you normally do business. Turns out it's not. Like, our big differentiator is our customer service. And we're like, what do you guys deal with other companies? Because like, we didn't consider ourselves, the A grade. We literally just thought we were doing the right thing. And it turns out that no, everybody else is horrible.
Yeah, there's going to be this renaissance called customer service.
I know.
You're
like, when you
hit
call
it right
us,
there. Yeah.
you get a human. That's the one place where we're not going to put AI is in the calls.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, Melvin, that's everything I think we wanted to chat about today. Other than going to patabid.com, if people want to get a hold of you, find out more information, is there anywhere they should look, or is that the best place?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me directly. Melvin@patabid.com is the best way to reach me. If you fill in the information on the website, that goes to everybody on the team. So somebody will get back to you quickly. Yeah, that's about it. And guys, thank you so much for taking the time today. Sorry if I went off the soapbox on preaching estimating, but yeah, that's my passion.
It's good to be passionate about something.
And you stayed true to that from the start to the finish.
And hey, if you're passionate about estimating, you're never going to have competition.
That's great.
Very
Well,
good, guys.
thank you so much, Melvin.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Jason. And have a great one.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of What's the Word, an electrical industry podcast. Hey, if you want to get a hold of us, we can be found on Instagram and on Facebook at What's the Word Podcast. Be sure to leave us a review on Apple. That's probably the best place to give us some sort of information about what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you want to hear in the future. We are available on all platforms. Thanks for listening.